Okay, so we're reading from Srila Prabhupada LILAMRITA chapter 3. A very nice saintly person. Please start.
There has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer to other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is
You can see, right?
now I can probably sorry. The offer of other benefit is only a deception. It's rather a harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. The benefit is not for one particular country causing mischief of another, but it benefits the whole universe. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Abhai's friend Narendranath Malik was insistent. He wanted Abhay to see a sadhu from Mayapur. Naren and some of his friends has already met the sadhu at his nearby ashrama on Vuldanga Junction Road, and now they wanted Abhai's opinion. Everyone within their circle of friends considered Abhay the leader. So if Naren could tell the others that Abhay also had a great regard for the sadhu, then that would confirm their own estimations. Abhay was reluctant to go, but Naren pressed him.
Hmm. You want to say something?
Um, there is a quote from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur where it says, the all the other benefits are of no use other than the benefits given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, as the benefit given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers is the truest and the greatest eternal benefit. Um, Others, like the benefit of one particular country causing mischief to another, it is not of a benefit, but what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers gave benefits the whole universe. That is
Right.
Harinam. And of course, Abhai's friend Narendranath Malik want Abhay to see a sadhu from Mayapur, as Abhai's friends considered him as the leader. If Abhay says he's a true sadhu, then probably they would follow what Abhay said. So that's why he wanted Abhay to see a sadhu from Mayapur. Even though Abhay was reluctant to go, Naren wanted him to go see the sadhu from Mayapur.
They had a lot of faith on his words, looks like. Yes. AJ, you please read. We start the next. Right.
Um, they stood talking amidst the passerby. They stood talking amidst the passerby on the crowded early evening street as the traffic of horse-drawn hackneys, ox carts, and occasional auto taxis and motor buses moved noisily on the road. Naren put his hand firmly around his friend's arm, trying to drag him forward, while Abai smiled but stubbornly pulled the other way. Naren argued that since they were only a few blocks away, they should at least pay a short visit. Abai laughed and asked to be excused. People could see the two young men were friends, but it was a curious sight. The handsome young man dressed in white khadi kurta and dhoti being pulled along by his friend. Naren explained that the sadhu, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, was a Vaishnava and a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One of his disciples, a sannyasi, had visited the Malik household and had invited them to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. A few of the Maliks had gone to see him and had been very much impressed.
One more.
But Abai remained skeptical. Oh no, I know all these sadhus, he said. I'm not going. Abai had seen many sadhus in his childhood. Every day his father had entertained at least 3 or 4 in his home. Some of them were no more than beggars, and some even smoked ganja. Gora Mohan had been very liberal in allowing anyone who wore the saffron robes of a sannyasi to come. But did it mean that though a man was no more than a beggar or ganja smoker, he had to be considered saintly just because he dressed as a sannyasi, or was collecting funds in the name of building a monastery, or could influence people with his speech?
Want to summarize?
Yeah. So again, it's more just from his experience as a child. Abai is like, hey, I'm not messing with these guys. They're all kind of tricksters and frauds, and they're so a legit sadhu is so few and far between at this time that he's not going to be tricked into going to see this guy, and more than likely has to give money or something to that extent for what he feels is probably a charlatan. So his friend Naren is saying, hey, no, this guy's legit, he's the real deal. Come with me. And he's just to Abai's just relying on his youth and saying, nah, I'm good. So they're kind of playfully arguing over or going or not.
Very nice. Thank you. Prasanthi?
No, by and large, they were disappointing lot. Abai had even seen a man in his neighborhood who was a beggar by occupation. In the morning, when others dressed in their work clothes and went to their jobs, this man would put on saffron cloth and go out to beg, and in this way earn his livelihood. But it but was it fitting that such a so-called sadhu be paid a respectful visit, as if he were a guru? Naren argued that he felt that this particular sadhu was a very learned scholar, and that Abhay should at least meet him and judge for himself. Abhay wished that Naren would not behave this way, but finally he could no longer refuse his friend. Together they walked past the Parsnath Jain temple to Ultadanga with its sign Bhakti Vinod Asana, Bhakti Vinod Asana, announcing it to be the quarters of the Gaudiya Mutt. When they inquired at the door, a young man recognized Mr. Mullik. Naren. Naren had previously given a donation and immediately escorted them up to the roof of the second floor and into the presence of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who was sitting and enjoying the early evening atmosphere with a few disciples and guests. So Abhay was reluctant to meet the sadhu because his idea of a sadhu is different from his childhood. So in his childhood, he used to see beggars coming to the house. Even they just wear saffron clothes, but they don't adhere to the actual sainthood. So he was reluctant, but his friend um, uh, tried to make him meet Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So he finally gives up his reluctance and meets, and he'll come to meet him.
Thank you. He finds in the Bhaktivinoda Asan in Ultadanga. It's at the quarter of the Gaudiya Mutt. Very nice. Second group.
Sitting with his back very straight, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati appeared tall. He was slender, his arms were long, and his complexion was fair and golden. He wore round bifocals with simple frames. His nose was sharp, his forehead broad, and his expression was very scholarly, yet not all timid. The vertical markings of Vaishnava Tilaka on his forehead were familiar to Abhay, as were the simple sannyasa robes that draped over his right shoulder, leaving the other shoulder and half his chest bare. He wore tulsi neck beads, and the clay Vaishnava markings of Tilaka were visible at his throat, shoulder, and upper arms. A clean white Brahmanical thread was looped around his neck and draped across his chest. Abhay and Naren, having both been raised in Vaishnava families, immediately offered prostrated obeisances at the sight of the revered sannyasi. While the two young men were still rising and preparing to sit, before any preliminary formalities of conversation had begun, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta immediately said to them, "You are educated young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world?" So here there's a description of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur when Abhay and his friend went to visit Naren. So here it describes how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a Vaishnava sannyasi. Like he had the the Vaishnava tilak on. He had the simple sannyas robes, the tulsi neck beads, and the Vaishnava markings of tilak on his throat, shoulder, and upper arms. And because even Abhay and Narayan were raised in Vaishnava families, they both offered their obeisances to the sannyasi. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke to them and asked them to preach Lord Chaitanya's Mahaprabhu's message throughout the world.
Yes. Mataji, can you-
Abhay could hardly believe that what he had just heard. They had not even exchanged views, yet this sadhu was telling them what they should do. Sitting face to face with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Abhay was gathering his wits and trying to gain a comprehensible impression. But this person had already told them to become preachers and go all over the world. Abhay was immediately impressed, but he was not going to drop his intelligent skepticism. After all, there were assumptions in what the sadhu had said. Abhay had already announced himself by his dress to be a follower of Gandhi. Sorry. And he felt the impulse to raise an argument. Yet, as he continued to listen to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta speak, he also began to feel won over by the sadhu's strength of conviction. He could sense that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did not care for anything but Lord Chaitanya, and that this was what made him great. This was why followers had gathered around him, and why Abhay himself felt drawn, inspired, and humbled, and wanted to hear more. But he felt obliged to make an argument to test the truth.
Mhm.
Because he was meeting him for the first time, but still, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him what to do. With his dress, he was looking like a follower of Gandhi, and he won because Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur cares only for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Other than that, he don't want to talk about anything. That's why Abhay was impressed by him, and yet he want to make an argument to test the truth.
Yeah, it says that this person had already told him to become the preacher, go all over the world. And it seems that Abhay was immediately impressed. This is the point. He was already impressed with his statement, but he was just wanted to argue with him because he was, the follower of Gandhi. He immediately raised an argument there. Thank you. Please. Srikar?
Drawn irresistibly into discussion, Abhay spoke up in answer to the words Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had so tersely spoken in the first second of their meeting. Who will hear your Chaitanya's message? Abhay queried. We are dependent country. First, India must become independent. How can we spread India culture if we are under British rule? Abhay had not asked haughtily, just to be provocative, yet his question was clearly a challenge. If he were to take this sadhu's remark to them as a serious one, and there was nothing in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's demeanor to indicate that he had not been serious. Abhay felt compelled to question how he could propose such a thing while India was still dependent. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied in a quiet, deep voice that Krishna consciousness didn't have to wait for a didn't have to wait for a change in Indian politics, nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important that it could not wait. So here we see that Srila Prabhupada, he poses a question to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur asked him to preach Lord Chaitanya's message, then he felt that who will hear Chaitanya's message now? He says that India is still under British rule. First, let us get independence, and then maybe people will be open to hear Chaitanya's message. But then he just wanted to challenge Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied, saying that in a very deep voice that Krishna consciousness need not wait for a change in political situation. Krishna consciousness is very important and it's an emergency that it need not wait. You're saying that the Krishna consciousness is very important. So it does not depend on who is ruling or on all that matters. It doesn't
Yes.
matter.
The Krishna consciousness is topmost priority. So Abhay was convinced. Yes. Srihari.
Abhay was struck by his boldness. How could he say such a thing? The whole world of India, beyond this little Ulta Danga rooftop, was in turmoil and seemed to support what Abhay had said. Sorry. Many famous leaders of Bengal, many saints, even Gandhi himself, men who were educated and spiritually minded, all might very well have asked the same question, challenging the sadhu's relevancy. And yet he was dismissing everything and everyone as if they were of no consequence. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta continued, whether one power or another rule was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man made political system, therefore, could actually help humanity. This was the verdict of the Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. Although everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards the nation of his birth as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement of Swaraj, were simply cultivating this illusion. Real welfare work, whether individual, social, or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him re establish his eternal relationship with the Supreme. So here, Abhay was struck by the boldness, like uh, like he was shocked that why Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati could say such a big thing, and even other famous leaders and many saints, and even Gandhiji was supporting Abhay. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati told them that all this was a temporary situation and the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness. And it is not one individual, but the real self is the spirit soul. So all these man-made political systems and serving the, um, who is regarding the nation of his birth as worshipable, all that is just a temporary and it's just an illusion. Only the, like he was describing how Krishna consciousness is the reality and all others is just an illusion.
Nice. Isn't it the fact he said that, and that's what we see in this world. Every uh, political leader comes with his own agendas. You know, interesting. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very focused in his talk. Prabhupada could accept that so easily, looks like, because he was very intelligent, spiritual, elevated soul. But now, not many can accept very easily. Very much. What is the name? Vijayanand Prabhu, please.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had articulated these ideas many times before in his writings. There will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. This benefit is not for one particular country causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe. The kindness that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has shown to jivas absolves them eternally from all wants, from all inconveniences, and from all the distresses. That that kindness does not produce any evil, and the jivas who have it will not be the victims of the evils of the world. As Abhay listened attentively to the arguments of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he recalled a Bengali poet who had written that even less advanced civilizations like China and Japan were independent, and yet India labored under political oppression. Abhay knew well the philosophy of nationalism, which stressed that Indian independence had to come first, as oppressed people was a reality. The British slaughter of innocent citizens was a reality, and independence would benefit people. Spiritual life was a luxury that could be afforded only after independence. In the present time, the cause of national liberation from the British was the only relevant spiritual movement. The people's cause was itself God. Okay, so in these paragraphs, we are seeing like two contradictory things actually. One is like the information shared by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So basically, he has articulated like in several times, merit of teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's also saying like any followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well as his teachings will lead to great benefit, and that benefit that anyone who attains by following the teachings will not be like specific for any particular country or a particular person. It will be like the benefits will be available for the whole universe. And also the samely the kindness as well. The kindness shown by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will help the people to come out of all the inconveniences and from distresses as well as from the evils. And the other para like is pointing the view which Abhay had. Like he was thinking like independence is more important, and it is not fair for the British to exploit the innocent citizens, and he was strongly believing that spiritual life was a luxury thing, and it can be only afforded after independence. And he was in the view of giving more importance to independence than to spiritual life.
Very nice. That's true, because everybody is trying to, even the good or bad, providing some temporary solutions. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is giving, which is a permanent solution, preparing for the soul, and that a solution, that kindness does not produce an evil, and the jivas who have it will not be the victims of evils of the world. And that's this another moment. So basically, both probably can go together, but this cannot wait for the other. Of course, not just like we can see, not everybody is doing taking parts, but they're working to fix the temporary situation of this world. But Krishna consciousness is the topmost priority, because ultimately, if we have this, then we have the solution for all the problems. But if you don't have this, irrespective of who rules what, it changes every day. It changes every day. Not many people will accept, but intelligent class of people will accept. That's why we see, the Krishna conscious movement will be accepted by very intelligent class of people who practiced thinking long-term values. I will read. Yet, because Abhay had been raised a Vaishnava, he appreciated what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was saying. This is the point. Not everybody can accept very easily. Abhay had already concluded that this was certainly not just another questionable sadhu, and he perceived the truth in what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. This sadhu wasn't concocting his own philosophy, and he wasn't simply proud or belligerent, even though he spoke in a way that kicked out practically every other philosophy. He was speaking the eternal teaching of the Vedic literature and the sages. And Abhay, love to hear it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, speaking sometimes in English and sometimes in Bengali, and sometimes quoting the Sanskrit verses of the Bhagavad Gita, spoke of Sri Krishna as the highest Vedic authority. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna had declared that a person should give up whatever duty he considers religious, religious, and surrender unto him, the personality of Godhead. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam saranam vraja. And the Srimad Bhagavatam confirmed the same thing. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmasaranam satam. All other forms of religion are impure and should be thrown out. And only Bhagavat Dharma, performing one's duty to please the Supreme Lord, should remain. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's presentation was so cogent that anyone who accepted the Shastras would have to accept his conclusion. Now we're coming back to Babita's earlier question also, we will cover this. So because Prabhupada's, he had intelligence, he's coming from the Vaishnava background, he knows what is what, he could connect the dots very easily. And he understood that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is not just another saint or just, whose jugglery words he's speaking, but he was speaking the eternal teachings of the Vedic literatures, and I will love to hear it. Now, at the same time, Bhaktisiddhanta, when he was hearing Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is multilingual. Actually, he could write many languages and very fluent in English as well. He spoke of Sri Krishna had the highest Vedic authority. So, Babita, for your question at the beginning also, when you mentioned, what proof we have is because we are taking Krishna as the authority. If you don't, you won't. And, if I steal something, no one is watching, so it means I have not done any mistake. Just because there's no witness, there's no proof. But we Vedic teachings accept that Krishna is the authority. And from Krishna, we learned that there are 8 people are witness for one's acts. The 8 directions that are witness for one's act. That's the karma. Eventually, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna had declared that one should give up all the so-called religions. So-called religions means what general people think the so-called religion means he's talking about referring to Hindu, Muslim, Christian. Not only that, it talks about any religion which is identifying a body as the self. Because it's the cheating religion. And Dharma project, it kicks up all these religions. All other forms of religion are impure and should be thrown out. And only Bhagavata Dharma, performing one's duties to please the Supreme Lord, should remain. This is what is Prabhupada understood from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Maybe one more person can read now. This one. Okay, who should read? Who should read? Nikunj Gopi Mataji, can you read this? Yes, still. I hope I didn't miss anyone.
Hello.
Yeah, you please read.
The people were now faithless, said Bhaktisiddhanta, and therefore they no longer believe that. I can't see Prabhuji. I'm sorry.
You can see? Oh, I don't know.
I'm sorry. Therefore, they no longer believed that devotional service could remove all anomalies, even on the political scene. He went on to criticize anyone who was ignorant of the soul and yet claimed to be a leader. He even cited names of contemporary leaders and pointed out their failures. And he emphasized the urgent need to render the highest good to humanity by educating people about the eternal soul and the soul's relationship to Krishna and devotional service. Abhay had never forgotten the worship of Lord Krishna or his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, and his family had always worshipped Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose mission Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was espousing. As these Gaudiya Mat people worshipped Krishna, he also had worshipped Krishna throughout his life and had never forgotten Krishna. But now he was astounded to hear the Vaishnava philosophy presented so masterfully. Despite his involvement in college, marriage, the national movement, and other affairs, he had never forgotten Krishna. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was now stirring up within him his original Krishna consciousness. And by the words of his spiritual master, not only was he remembering Krishna, but he felt his Krishna consciousness being enhanced 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. What had been unspoken in Abhay's boyhood, what had been vague in Jagannath Puri, what he had been distracted from at college, what he had been protected in by his father, who surged forth within Abhay in responsive feelings, and he wanted to keep it. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, like he said, people were now faithless, and therefore they no longer believed in devotional service. And he went on criticizing, like, they are ignorant to the soul, yet they claim to be leaders. And he even cited some of the contemporary leaders' names and pointed out their failures. And he emphasized the urgent need to render highest good quality to humanity by educating people about the eternal soul, not just by political leadership. And he wants to emphasize on the leaders to emphasize on the relationship, eternal soul, and the relationship between the soul and to Krishna and devotional service. Abhay has never forgotten the worship of Krishna, even though he was in college and even though during his marriage and national movement and all other affairs. And he always worshipped Krishna and his teachings in Bhagavad Gita. And his family always worshipped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who now he saw all those were emphasized by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur more. And even though he has not forgotten Krishna, what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying now stirred up his internal consciousness again about Krishna and his original Krishna consciousness. So he is more motivated by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preachings from inside, and it enhanced the feeling of Krishna consciousness thousands and millions of times in Srila Prabhupada. And what he has unspoken as a boy, and as, like, what he has been in Jagannath Puri, what he has been distracted from the college, and what his father protected in him, all these feelings came back again after hearing to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's instructions.
That is Guru. Very nice. We'll just take a couple of minutes to reflection. I was very much impressed how Sasura Swami has writes this whole details from Prabhupada's talk, and so most of them is Prabhupada provides so much of details. Any quick reflections today? What we read about this chapter, at least.
I thought it was interesting that he went in there, that Prabhupada went in with the mindset of, like, I'm going to be confrontational. I'm not going to buy into this. He went in very skeptically, and but at the same time was able to quickly kind of adjust course and realize and admit that maybe he was off, that his skepticism was not well placed at the time, it seems.
Because he was a Vaishnava, he knew what is gold and what is iron. And he noticed that a lot of people are really not sad saints, they're pretending. Actually, I hope we all also have, up to some extent, imbibed those qualities, right? Now we can understand very well who is sadhu, who is not sadhu, isn't it? After serving this movement and reading, practicing, we have been endowed. So Prabhupada had this ability to know. Prabhupada once said that he said to one of the Mr. Patel, Dr. Patel, he said that I have been taught my spiritual master to to expose about who is sadhu and who is not sadhu. So his father was very much kind of lenient, he's just whoever he sees, he's just offered respect, thinking as a sadhu. But Prabhupada knew that there's a great risk and danger. He was very careful about, and now finally he finds a convincing and genuine sadhu. That is very impressive. But you pointed at the beginning, he was not at all interested because hardly he finds any genuine sadhu even that time. Thank you. Any other things? One more comments. So we know that Naren asked him, insisted. He knows that Abhay will not listen, but he insisted so much that somehow or other he brought him to Danga at a quarter of Gaudiya Math. So convinced. That meeting, this is the first meeting he spoke was so much of convinced because of his staunch philosophy and clear understanding of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's like awakening, seems like real awakening came within Prabhupada, even though he was after so many years, even though he practiced so much. That's what I wanted to say. So it's 8:41. We would like to stop here. Thank you so much for all of your participation. We'll resume where we left from here tomorrow. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.